came across a really good book a few years ago named Mastery by the author Robert Greene. And that book had a really profound impact on me because at that time I was just coming out of college, having no idea what I wanted to do. I was ready to take the predictable route, just pursue my master's and work in the psychology field. And I feel like I was taking an inauthentic path for some reason. I felt like I was trying to just avoid people asking me questions, what I want to do in my life, my career, how much money I'm making, and things like that, that we all trying to externally impress people time to time. But I knew it was a crossroad for me, and I took that leap of faith of experimenting in my 20s and, seeing what happens, really. And essentially in the book, Mastery, he discusses, Robert Greene discusses find your life vocation, right? And going through an apprenticeship, having a mentor in some way, and learning these different skills and combining all these different interests that you have, and somehow trending in that direction that is towards your vocation, not sure what it is yet, and then all somehow come together like a puzzle, approaching your 30s or how long that ever takes for you. So at that time, I was age 22, just finished reading the book, making the decision that I'm not going to pursue my grad school classes and not pursue master's. And, it was really an initial fearful reaction because you're like, oh, like your society tells you, you need to get this, you need to do this, you need pause, and there was a sense of vulnerability. Kind of felt like naked in a way, kind of like, ugh, and it felt like you kind of felt like a loser a little bit. But I knew I was honest to myself, and I was taking the authentic path. So in the meantime, I was like, all right, what am I really good at? What's my strongest interest at? What's my strengths? I realized I like the aspect of business and like the aspect of psychology, mental health. So I was like, how can we combine these two things and make them a vocation? What skills do I need to acquire for me to become the person I need to be in the future? So I worked as a behavior tech, worked with children with autism at schools and homes, and that was a great experience, and learned about behavior plans and how to prompt children, and how to really approach my job to the point, seeing the purpose behind the job. Even though I knew I didn't want to work with children with autism at the time, I knew this was a foundation that was being set. While I was working that, I was like, I want to start a side job. Like, I like business. I like being competitive. I love sports. I grew up playing football. It reminded me a lot of playing like quarterback, right? You're calling the shots. You're the face of the company, face of the team. I like that idea. I like that, it's up to you how hard you want to work, right? So I was like, let me create a side business. So I did a side business, pressure washing. It was only me. It was a low risk because it was not that much down payment to it. Of course, you need to buy a pressure washer, right? Like a $600, $800 pressure washer, and then start knocking down doors and putting yourself out there and marketing on Facebook. So I was like, all right, and that's nothing to lose there. Like, I know for a fact I won't lose money off this. If anything, I make some money. Like, they will be paying me for my apprenticeship. That was the thought to me. I was like, wow, they'd be paying me for me to go to school, basically, so I could learn about customer service, advertisement, more about myself, what I need to work on for future businesses, and I was like, wow, what a good idea. So that's what I did. I did that for a few years. It definitely taught me a lot about customers, how to please the customer, how to get things done efficiently, organized, and having that almost go mindset, right? Because you're competing with other pressure washing businesses. The next job I had was as a house manager at a sober living house. Guys recovering from addiction. This was probably my favorite job out of all three, because I gained a strong connection with those guys. Took them to AA meetings, give them their meds, make sure they do their chores. We did activities together, and really learn where they came from, their background, why they have these certain belief systems about themselves and about others. And I'm realizing, in my past, most of us in general, we judge these people, why they choose this certain route, why they choose drugs and alcohol. But most of them went through a lot of things in their childhood, and many things that are unresolved, and cycles of traumas, really, I saw. So these three things, I had a behavior tech, I worked at a pressure washing business I owned, and I worked as a house manager at a sober living house. And at this time too, I was also doing Toastmasters, public speaking class, because I knew I was not good at talking with people. I wasn't the greatest. I was not the smoothest talker. I was like, okay, I need, that's a weakness. I need to confront these things, I think to take this route, you need a mindset of, you need to confront it. You need to be courageous enough to realize that you have these weaknesses, really, and being vulnerable to your own self. And that's a harsh reality, because a lot of people, including myself, don't want to admit, like, we have these weaknesses, we have these limitations, but the honest truth, we do. And that's what makes us grow. That's what makes us human. And that's what really creates the human spirit. It really creates the human spirit, really. So I look back those three jobs, and I was like, wow, what a fulfilling, different, crazy experiences, right? Like, instead of me taking the boring route, the predictable route, pursuing my master's, let them tell me what books to read, and let them give, essentially being my fate being controlled by the school system, pursuing my master's. And I created my own education. I read my own books, read great books such as, by Tolstoy, A Confession, or Think and Grow Rich, or books by Mastery, Robert Greene, of course, or Joseph Campbell books, The Hero's Journey. And I was like, wow, like, this 100% I'd rather take this route than the route of the predicted route that society tells me to take, and try to please others. All right, it's taught me more about myself, who I am, why I want out of life, my weaknesses, what I need to work on, right? And how can we combine all these things, and just trusting the process, trusting how everything will come together as a puzzle, and seeing the whole picture, right? Because it's really hard to see the whole picture sometimes, especially when a lot of thoughts, a lot of questions, a lot of emotions, a lot of doubts come, across your mind. But I realized I'd rather 100% take this route, way over than the predictable route. And then I knew the next step for me is just like, all right, I've done the sober living, behavior tech, pressure washing business. Let me do sales. So I started doing sales, did that, and now doing really good in that. And I was like, wow, okay, I got experience in sales. I got experience with the mental health field, working with people with addiction. I have experience in my own business, my own failures. Not exactly, the business didn't go exactly my way. It was very challenging. It was a lot of rejections, approaching door knocking, and trying to put myself out there, and it was very difficult. But it was, luckily I did that in my free time, and I did that on the weekend, so I had nothing to lose. In the end, I made decent amount, enough for me to be pretty happy that, I essentially got paid for schooling. They paid me for my apprenticeship. So I'm just really grateful that I took this route instead of taking the predictable route, and reading my own books, reading my own self-development, spirituality, knowing myself more, depth psychology, great people such like Carl Jung, Abraham Maslow, Sigmund Freud, and understanding there's a lot of things underneath the surface that most of us often don't scratch, and we live a life with desperation most of the time. Most of us take the route that most people want us to take. We get into the wrong relationships, and we make the wrong big decisions, and it affects us the rest of our lives. Because once you fall in these big decisions as the person you marry, and et cetera, it affects you for the rest of your life. And I realized that, and I knew I needed to pause. I needed to know myself. Let's take this route, right? The experiment. Let's see what happens here. Let's read these kind of books. Let's not rush into things. Let's think about this. Let's ask the important questions. Let's be aware of of myself, society, what I'm trying to get out of life. What does success mean to me, right? And it comes down to having love and having service for others, really, I realized. And it's not about the destination, but it's about the journey. And I'm so happy and feel way more fulfilled that I took in the more authentic route, and being true to myself and being honest with myself, and looking down to my weaknesses and confronting these weaknesses, and not being shy of admitting that I have my own limitations, and having trust and hope of my path, even though I could not see at the time. But now looking back, reflecting, gaining all these different experiences and skills and insights about people, career, work, family, I was like, wow, like, that's good, right? But yeah, I just felt like expressing that today, and that came across my mind, is how I feel like most of us, we're living someone else's life. We're not living truly authentic. Like at the time in our 20s, we don't think about it. We choose the highest paying career, and we're just happy in the moment, right? But it hits you hard in your 40s and 50s. That's when a lot of people have midlife crises, and they're honest with themselves. Like they realize they didn't choose the most fulfilling job for themselves, and they're more worried about what other people think about themselves and pleasing others. So I read the right books, I listened to the right people, and I listened to myself, and that's the route I took, and I wouldn't take it for anything else. I'm glad I took this route. I'm still seeking, but I am definitely 100% trending in the right direction. And I hope this my experiences, my insight, my thoughts, how I see things, and I could you guys could get something out of this video. So thanks.